Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is the airport review panel meeting for April 24th. And we've got a number of things on the agenda to go over, and we've got some new community members who have issues that they've been experiencing. And so we'll hear from them, and we will also talk about the progress that's being made on a variety of different fronts with respect to the airport. So there've been a lot of issues developing over the years. You both said you were kind of new to this problem and becoming aware of it because of the increasing noise levels. And so there's been a plan at the airport for a lot of years, since 2017, to really expand significantly the terminal there and improve their idea of, improving a lot of different facilities, adding a control tower, a better firefighting facility, taxiways, and a number of things. And they've been going through these projects bit by bit in what we would call segmentation, which is something they're not supposed to do. They're supposed to submit their project as a whole for an assessment from the environmental impact. But they've managed over the years to go through bit by bit and do pieces of this to our frustration. But they have put in a plan for this terminal to expand from 25,000 square feet to 125,000 square feet. If we get your email contact, I can forward you a briefing we presented to the board just last month or 2 months ago to discuss the variety of issues that we see growing with respect to other aspects of the airport growth plans. But they put forward a plan to the FAA for this 5 times increase of the terminal there from 25,000 square feet to 125,000 square feet. We objected to that. A grassroots organization led by Judy Hockner here. What's that? Okay. Okay. Has pushed back on that. They challenged the issuance of a finding of no significant impact by the FAA. Tried it in court to overturn that. We had support from our congressman, and they fought with the FAA, and the FAA basically rubber stamped it and said, no, this is going forward. It's not funded yet, but they are getting permits. There's a lot of activity going on that we're concerned with, and new projects have emerged of things they want to do. They want to add a new large area for private jets, a new terminal to host private jets there. The flight school has been growing, which I know is what you two have been experiencing the most. There's legislation in New Jersey for tax incentives for some particular kinds of depressed areas that includes a rider to build a warehouse, and tax incentives for building a warehouse on airport property when the airport property is not one of the areas that are being addressed by that legislation. So that to us is a concern that if you build a large warehouse on the airport property, what does that suggest? It suggests they're going to be interested in having some kind of air carrier bring traffic in, bring in goods and unload them and take off again and any time of night, not just commercial air traffic. So a number of different issues have been identified like that we brought up to the attention of the supervisors. Not all of them do we have solutions. We don't have solutions for, but we are pressing on issues about the permits. New Jersey residents are challenging the permits being issued for some of the construction because of concerns about ground contaminants of chemicals, firefighting foam chemicals that were used over at the Naval Air Warfare Center, which was a Superfund site. What we have learned is DOD plans to issue, I learned this, Susan, from WHYY, that they're planning to they have a plan for their report on the site remediation to come out in 2027. The whole site's been excavated. Okay, so I don't quite know how to reconcile that it's all been excavated, but the pollution report isn't out, or where the contaminants are and how to deal with it. But the site has been excavated. So um, there's a number of issues like that with respect to the pollution, the fact that they're issuing permits when their own site remediation plan isn't published until 2026. So there are New Jersey residents pushing back on the permitting. We had as I was starting to tell you outside, one of the supervisors, John Lewis, took an initiative to approach the Mercer County executive over there and have a discussion with him about our concerns. Because for many years, we've been able to get no response whatsoever from the airport to letters, requests for information. They're just unwilling to even respond. John was successful in getting a meeting for discussing our concerns about what's going on over there. And they had a productive conversation, and I can give you more information about what came out of that meeting. They're willing to talk about noise mitigation techniques. They are interested in hearing, how many complaints are being heard. Historically, another issue that has gone on is through an OPRA request, Open Records Act request for information from the airport. Some of our New Jersey friends who were concerned about this issue learned that the airport policy was to destroy all complaints. Emails or phone calls that were registered were basically flushed. And that led to them saying to their politicians, we have no complaints. We don't see why there's a problem because we don't have complaints. Am I misrepresenting that, Judy? Okay. Right.
So this is one of the times where right now, no one can hear you because you don't have your mic. I know it's such a pain,
Okay.
but it looked like he's talking.
Thank
to
you.
himself.
You're
Directed mostly to call, and the phone calls for sure were destroyed. It's not clear what happened with the emails, but
Okay.
mostly people, there was a complaint line to call for noise, and those were destroyed for years.
okay.
Isn't there a form too? Because I tried to do that. That didn't seem to work. They have some kind of online Mercer airport form, noise form.
They do. Or they did. I don't know if I haven't tried recently. When we were learning, they were getting rid of them.
Names, names. I'm really not the school marm,
We
but
didn't identify who we were.
Right.
yes. So when they write the minutes, it's harder. So
All right,
the first
Judy
voice
Hochner.
was,
And I am a resident,
thank you.
and I know that the complaint form was always onerous. I do not know if it's still active or not. I suspect it is.
My name is Dawn Shannon. I live in Lower Makefield, and I've lived here for 25 years. And just so you can understand where I live in regards to the airport, I live at 2216 Yardley Morrisville Road, which is just outside of Yardley Borough. And I have been using the online complaint form. I don't know what it does, if it gets to anybody. I mean, I send in the complaint, but I don't really know what happens after that.
Okay. I think it's good. I think we need to encourage neighbors to do more of that because one of the comments from Mr. Benson, the Mercer County executive, was that they were going to, he said to John Lewis, after Easter, Mercer County will engage a consultant to do an operational review of TTN's operations. The project is likely to last 6 months into the fall. Part of that review will look at noise complaints over the time to see if they have been logged correctly and acted upon. So I think we need to put complaints in. And if the more we can get neighbors to log them, and we have a number of people who have presented, that they are being disturbed at night and that kind of thing. And some by the bigger planes, some by the smaller planes.
I do know they have to do, I don't know if it's a yearly or quarterly basis, they have to send in those complaints to the FAA. So they are received, and it is really important that they get them.
So if you have other neighbors who have similar complaints, this is one avenue that they will look at. And they've acknowledged that now that they will look at that. So
So for the people at home, is it www.mercer Mercer, Trenton? I mean, like, how do you get access to?
Let me ask Dawn.
So I go to the Trenton Mercer Airport website and if you scroll down, there's a link or hyperlink to like register a complaint. And I just fill it in. But again, I don't know, like, it's noisy all day.
Right.
I have a full-time job and I can't be, like, I'm just, it's frustrating.
My name's Chris Wismer. I live in the northern part of the township. I've been a resident for 33 years. I've never had it like this. It's the small planes that are problematic for me. Essentially, it's the flight school. The number of planes with the flight school has just increased so much. It seems like every 5 minutes there's a plane going off. If it's a day that is a flyable day, I wasn't successful in using form. It was an incorrect form. I did call the flight school and I asked them about it. And they said, oh yeah, we're going to be really busy today. And they said, you shouldn't live near an airport. And this is what they told me. They said that their training is up around 202, up above New Hope. And so essentially what they do is that they fly and then they turn at the river and come over across the river, and then they go up alongside the river and they get up to New Hope. And so it's just that constant drone. And what they're doing is they're trying to achieve the flying altitude. So it's the climbing. So I definitely would be interested in any kind of noise study because it's just this constant drone.
Mhm.
And there's an app that I think it's Flight Radar 24, and you can just watch them, go all day. And they start very early. I mean, they say as soon as the sun rises, they can start flying. They can fly as early as 6 a.m. and they usually don't stop until you see that it's dark. So the other planes are not as problematic, but this flight school, in terms of the volume of flights, I mean, as I said, I've lived here for 33 years and it's just become a constant drone now. So it's very problematic for me.
Okay.
This is Dawn Shannon. I would like to agree with your statement with Chris. I didn't even know I was in the flight path of the airport until recently, because you're right, it's the small planes. And I think outside I described it as someone's coming over with a leaf blower to your house every 10 minutes. Cause you have a better,
I don't know.
right. But like one day I was clocking it and I was like, cause I work from home every 10 minutes. So, and I also have the extra benefit of having helicopters, which shake my house. And I have been trying to get some like video evidence. And that's the other thing, like if they're not going to do anything about it, they're definitely flying too low. If I can see the letters on your helicopter with my eyes, you are too low. So I've been trying to, it's not every time, but like there's definitely, it's happened twice recently within the last 2 weeks. And I've been trying to get a video of it. And I went to the FAA website to try to find a place to log, because to me, that's egregious. That's dangerous. And there's no reason for them to be that low. But I can't even, like the FAA website, I couldn't figure out
Mhm.
how to log that. They don't have a nice little portal.
So we did approach them about this, John Lewis, and he's talking about looking at their operations and trying to understand this, but he said, from his perspective, limiting flight school is a non-starter. The community college program is one of the few on the East Coast and is an important asset for Mercer County. So it's not the attitude we'd like to hear, and how they could distribute the flights differently if they're going to have this flight school. But one of our panel members was going to approach the flight school to talk to them if they knew what a nuisance it has become to the New Jersey residents as well as the PA. So Rick just had the exact same discussion. Rick he was here at our last meeting. He's a New Jersey resident, experiences the same thing. And we had an interview with WHYY. A reporter was interested in, I guess it was the PFAS issue that was first raised that got their attention. As they talked through the PFAS issue, they became more interested in the rest of the problem. And so we spent an hour and a half with an interview that hasn't been released yet. It's supposed to any time, and we can, put out there that this is out. We're hoping this will raise the awareness for New Jersey residents, because honestly, PA residents going over and complaining about this doesn't get anywhere with Mercer County. Okay, we know that. So John Lewis's approach to talk to Mercer County and say, consider our side of the story here is real progress. That was a good step to make. And it doesn't mean all the problems are going to be resolved, but at least there's a dialogue going where we can discuss that. And if they look at the noise issues, perhaps there's a way to try to distribute the airplane traffic in a way that is not so annoying to everybody. So,
Are there any ways that they can make the planes more, less noisy? I mean, any types of kits that they could add, do anything that, to be a better neighbor in addition to flying in different places for training?
do you have
No,
an
I don't
opinion on
think-
that?
Yeah, I really don't think, I used to fly airplanes, so first of all, I don't think they'd put them on because it probably cost more in gas than with the noise reduction. But there is remedies by different ground routes, different approaches to the training areas, different training areas. It sounds to me like their training area is built around the small fleet they had years ago. And they never expanded the airspace to accommodate larger fleets of aircraft. So, I mean, there's no reason why they can't turn earlier, fly up the river. I mean, I went to flying training school in Texas, and we used to fly over rivers whenever we climbed and descended.
Well, they are flying over the river, but unfortunately, that's where, Lower Makefield is a river community. So that
Okay.
flying over the river is.
So you live near the
Yeah,
water
yeah,
then.
That's- yeah.
right. And the fact is that
But-
that's what they told me at the flight school, that, the climbing is making more noise.
Yeah.
In order to get to the altitude they want quicker. And if you look, they don't get to that, I guess, flying altitude, like probably 2,000.
Right,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
So, essentially they're climbing from maybe 1,200 feet to get
Yeah.
to the 2,000 feet. And I hear it's even going to be worse in the summer.
Yeah.
Because they said they're going to have to put more.
Well, every aircraft doesn't have to follow the same route.
Right.
I mean, they do now because those are what the FAA rules are. But I mean, if you plan ahead and have different training areas, is that working?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah. If you plan ahead and you have different training areas and different routes, you could have 2 or 3 routes in the same training area and for climbing and descending. And that's the way to mitigate the noise. It just sounds like they're not planning ahead. Like Richard said, it was a small concept that overgrew itself, and they just haven't planned ahead with airspace or approaches and stuff like that.
I mean, the majority of the time, I guess they take that, they call it the 2-4 runway, I guess 240-degree runway, which flies directly over the river. And then they basically take the right turn and go up along the river in order to get to the 202 area. But I've seen occasionally where they'll go in the opposite direction. Instead of flying over the river, they'll go the other way. And that would send them up to like Princeton and over the New Jersey communities. But it's very, very rare that they do that. So,
Yeah.
Wondering if they say that the tower is the one that decides which runway is in use. But is that done on an immediate decision, or is that something?
Well, usually it's prevailing winds determine what runway you use. And I mean, I've lived here for 20 years too, and all the winds come out of the west. So
Someone told me recently that that's only true above a certain wind, and that the majority of the time the winds are below that criteria. and
well,
they
yeah,
go the
yeah,
other way.
that's probably true, but I mean, it depends on the aircraft, it depends on the runway. You know, heavy aircraft, you'll change the winds. When the winds are at a lower speed, you'll change the winds. And I mean, I know by going down you know, by going down to Philadelphia, they always take off to the north. You rarely see them taking off to the south or landing to the south. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that impact that.
Well, I mean, I certainly observed the bigger planes going both ways over our house. Okay, and so we live up near Patterson Farm off of Mirror Lake Road. And we don't have as many of the little planes because I think they are turning up the river. But if you're in Yardley Morrisville Road, it's curious that you're getting them down there. So maybe I need to look at the flight aware.
I think they take off, they go up the river, they basically fly around 202 and New Hope. Then they come down and they circle back and then they land. So she's probably getting them on the reverse trip where I'm getting them when they're ascending after they've taken off.
Well, it's certainly feedback we would like to get to the school. And it's feedback I think we need to get to Mercer County and TTN to talk about if they're going to look at noise mitigation techniques, which, you know, has sort of been our fallback, that if we can't confront them legally, if we can't confront them, you know, the various aspects that we think they should be doing because they're ignoring the noise effects, the pollution effects on the community. Our last ditch is going to be noise mitigation, okay, to try to get them to distribute the flights in a way that is less intrusive to people. So that's why I think John's approach to them is a good thing. It's a good starting point. But I think telling people, you know, what our experience is going to be important. So I think emailing the Board of Supervisors is a good thing because they are going to start communicating. They have, you know, broken the ice and communicating directly to the Mercer County folks. So we can certainly, we will be supporting that position as well, obviously. So,
Couple comments about this small plane issue, which I know is a difficult issue. Lead is
Just say your
also
name
an
one more
issue.
time. Or do you guys write the minutes? Like, how do you prepare the minutes? Because you should be, if you're doing them, you know, you
Mhm.
should be kind of saying who said what. It doesn't have to be exact. But if even, you know, sometimes people are listening and they can't see. So I don't want to keep interrupting people. Say your name
I
again.
think your minutes don't go verbatim, right?
I don't know. Some committees have them transcribed and some don't.
Oh,
I don't
I
know
thought
the
it
ins
was
and
more
outs.
I don't go that far. Yeah.
Okay.
So I hit the topics and say who, you know, what were the things that were being stated in the themes is basically where I go
So
with it.
name once, you don't have to say it again.
Okay.
All right, I'll get it. Thank you. Okay. Two things. Lead is an issue with small planes because there's lead in the fuel, in the small plane fuel. And it's supposed to be removed by 2030, but I don't even know if that's going to happen. So there is also a health impact, not just the noise impact. There was a study done in San Jose right after COVID, an airport, that said that the levels of the children at the end of the rear runway were higher than Flint, Michigan lead in their blood. Those flights, I think you probably calculate that we were about half the number of flights that they were, but still, they're high. It's not insignificant. And the amount of lead coming out of those planes may not be insignificant. So it's an issue for us and for New Jersey residents. That could be something that we've asked years ago whether they were looking at lead in the New Jersey residents were impacted, and they were not. Lead in the blood of the residents nearby. About a year ago, I noticed that they were starting to do lead analysis in Trenton, mostly because of things like paint and water piping. But it could also be worth pointing out to the health department in New Jersey that they have another source of lead that could be significant. You know, like part of what we do here is just look into how it's impacting what you do, how the community.
Mhm.
So it's another thing to potentially look into. The other thing is this is a national problem. This is a problem across the country. And there was recently a public notice to the FAA. They're redoing their rules for flight schools. The public period for comment is closed, but I can share with you what they're trying to do with flight schools. So it was pretty lengthy legislation. I didn't read it all, but it could be the kind of thing where if there's pieces in there that are, that we see would be impacting us, we might be worth reaching out at community to the FAA
Okay,
and saying, yeah, by the way, these are also affecting us.
okay. We've
So-
got 2 flyers here.
Yeah.
We might be able to look
I'll
at
share with
some of
you,
that, yeah.
This is Darlene Yapley, right?
Right,
Right,
okay,
they have a group, about 90 communities across the country called Aviation Impacted Communities. And she works with that on a national basis as a volunteer. And she lets people know when you have an opportunity to make public notice to things that, usually what the FAA puts out.
okay, thank you. Okay, so other things that we've been concerned with are the PFAS chemicals there, and the WHYY, the woman who's writing the article, Zoe Reed, had identified on the PA Water website locations where they do monitoring. It wasn't the locations, it was just site numbers of where they do PFAS monitoring. Some of those had positive numbers, so she tracked them down, and through the Public Affairs Office from PA Water, she learned that the sites with positive values were well sites. They were not from the river. But it led to the question, because they had sites on the website that were Bristol, further places further down river. So we were interested in trying to identify those sites. Did you get anywhere
No,
trying with that, Steve?
no. My thought was to contact the testing company, but I don't have a reliable way to get through to them. So I may have to talk to your WHYY contact.
Okay. Yeah, I asked her how she did that, and she said basically talk to the public affairs.
Okay.
So if they have if PA Water has a public affair, just a,
Well, I'm not talking about PA Water. I'm talking about the company that actually did the testing.
okay.
So.
All right, we
let
can
me-
connect you with Zoe.
Let me talk to her.
Yeah.
If you could send me her information, I'll give her a phone call
You
and
bet.
try and get through it that way.
Okay,
I was gonna try and sneak in the back door and
yeah.
get information if I could.
Okay, and who is the testing company?
Don't know.
Okay,
I mean, that was my big roadblock.
got it. Okay,
I thought it'd be on the spreadsheet that you sent me.
yeah, yeah.
but I couldn't find it.
Okay. So we just want to keep an eye on that and our attitude is it's better to stop the pollutant from getting into the river to begin with through the mitigation step. And the problem is there's no transparency as to what the process is they're doing to where they've tested. And we're pushing for a whole site survey because we don't know where the chemicals were. They did use them as weed killers. They sprayed them in training, and where they are on the site is unknown, and they want to start excavating. And so if they're excavating where there's pollutants there, they can go through tributaries right down to the Delaware. And then it becomes a problem of how do you clean it up in the drinking water rather than stopping it in the first place. So, yes, sir.
While you're on drinking water, I have not gotten, tax season just drove me nuts, so I did not get a hold of Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority or the Trenton Water Utility or Morrisville, and there's another Aqua. But I will next week get in contact with these people, see what they know about or introduce them, if not, what we're trying to do in terms of bringing to light the PFAS problems and the potential pollution of the river. We don't, it's either they are or they're not, but the studies aren't being done to determine whether it is. And I think that's our point. If they do the studies and prove there's no issue, that's fine, but they're not. So these companies who are responsible for water quality control should be on our side. And if they're not, we'll see if we can make them.
So most of Lower Makefield's water comes from PA American Water. Aqua handles the other end, if you would. So, and I can tell you that they do test. Now, whether or not they're a tester, there's a whole change coming, kind of like your point about they're gonna let us know what's there after the site's all redone. The standards for water testing are changing. So we know where they're going, but until they're actually officially changed, they still get to use the old ones, which are probably not sensitive enough. But PA is pretty transparent with their information, and we have it because we've been monitoring it specifically related to the pipeline issue in Upper Makefield.
True.
So, please reach out to David Kratzer because he has some recent information if you
We-
can't get it from.
Well, we want to elevate their awareness of the digging that potentially is going to go on at Trenton, and stop it before you have to monitor it. Help us force the airport to have to do a study, which anybody else in the world has to do.
Well,
And all we're doing is asking them to do the same thing for us.
Absolutely.
their response will be they are doing a study, but the information from the study doesn't come out until after they have their project started. Okay, and so, and New Jersey DEP has issued permits now for them to start their excavation, but we don't have this report out. So that's why New Jersey residents have standing to be able to, you know, put some sort of, oppose those permits. And has anything happened on any of that? Are you aware, Judy?
Knowledge that they received their request for appealing,
Mhm.
hearing on appeal, but it appears we've been trying to find out what the timing is. There's no timing by which they have to respond. We can't find any regulations, which means the construction does not stop, even though the permit has been appealed. So basically the appeal process could drag on. And the construction's not going on yet, right? Although the AR, the new firefighting building might be being built. But basically, that's kind of shocking, but there does not seem to be a requirement that they respond to this appeal and stop any construction. So that's what we know.
It's ironic that we can't find a federal judge to stop something like this could impact tens and tens and tens of thousands of people.
Mm.
Yet they'll do other things that don't impact anybody.
Well, this is where we wanted to try to get other municipalities involved to join forces. We tried approaching the PA DEP and we went directly to them. They kind of told us this wasn't their jurisdiction. So we went through our congressman. He approached them and they pushed back on that. And we said, but we drink the water too. It is your jurisdiction if what they do affects our drinking water. But we didn't get anywhere. And so this would be, if we thought that if we had multiple municipalities, Bristol, Tullytown, Morrisville, all that use the Delaware downstream, express this concern, that maybe the PA DEP would actually, support us in this and approach New Jersey and say, can you tell us what you're doing? What is your site remediation plan? Where have you drilled? Because what we would like is them to survey the whole site, okay, and not just a few we don't know what sites they've surveyed, okay, and so they may be excavating sites that they haven't looked at, and that doesn't make any sense. So not sure how to get that off the ground. We can make a recommendation to the board and see if there's a way to try to rally forces with other.
I thought when we last talked about that you guys are going to reach out to the contact person in Steve's office as well as in Brian's office because they have been the ones who have coordinated the meetings before. We're happy to support
Mhm.
anything, but it doesn't have the same impact when Lower Makefield writes to Bristol as it does when, their respective senator, whatnot. And I'm not picking on Bristol. We love Bristol.
Mhm.
I'd also tell you that I was contacted recently by people in Middletown, right along, say behind Shady Brook, for lack of a better expression.
Okay, yeah,
And apparently they're also feeling the impact in a way that I hadn't realized before. And I encourage
noise.
them. Yes.
okay,
I know it's different than water, but
yeah.
I think it, as we keep on the two prongs, that's the best way to do it.
Okay. Upper Makefield had approached us too,
Great.
and
New Hope,
want to know how to help.
you know?
And so even in Newtown, they were concerned about the noise and the effects on the community and stuff like that. So we did reach out to Steve's office and Rosemary, and they didn't jump on it, but we need to go back and, I think they will if we put a little more request to it. They basically are saying, you need to go get New Jersey involved, the New Jersey residents involved. And it's true. We need New Jersey residents. And if anybody has New Jersey friends who are bothered by the airport, they should be talking to their commissioners because the commissioners they're not going to be responsive to us. So,
Anytime you want to say anything, just jump in. We don't,
Yeah.
we don't call
Yeah,
on
go ahead.
people.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, I was just listening to most of it. Yeah, it definitely does seem more like a need for Mercer County residents to speak up and take action. Obviously, there are some limitations jurisdiction wise that affect us. So there's probably some stuff we can do. I like the good neighbor comment that Chris brought up before about maybe talking to the flight school to see if we can change the way that they're flying a lot of their smaller Cessnas.
mhm.
So I feel like that could be a potential path. It's much more minor than the rest of the issues, but could be a small victory.
Yeah, well, for some people, it's the bigger issue, or it's a big issue. So how to approach them and not have the response that's just, well, you shouldn't have moved here.
Yeah, that's terrible. I'm
That-
so sorry that they said that.
Joe. Yeah. Joe, you were talking about trying to talk to the flight school in some capacity last time? Is that true?
No, I said I was not going to get involved in flight school because of a potential conflict.
Okay. I remember you saying the conflict, but I thought you were still interested in trying to pursue that. Okay.
I would be happy to go talk to them if you'd like to mark me down on the minutes for that.
Okay.
Is it true there is a curfew, a voluntary curfew between midnight and 6 a.m. that there shouldn't be any planes flying?
So on that comment, that makes me think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you have flying experience more than I do, but it sounds like they're using visual flying rules. And so that's why they're not flying during that period of time, has more to do with the darkness. And so these Cessna aircraft do not have its instrument flight equipment that allows them to navigate at night. So the good news is they're not doing it when you're sleeping, but that's probably to answer your curfew question.
Is it also any type of safety issue, given that these pilots, are training and, they are flying over, populated areas? So I just wonder, given that there was the crash in Northeast Philadelphia not too long ago. So I just wonder if any of that's been involved in the assessment and studies.
There's certain criteria have to go before you can fly solo. So usually if they're flying and they haven't flown solo yet, they're flying with an instructor. So there's probably two people in the airplane, not one. And if they are flying solo, they should have been certified to fly solo, which means going through certain tests, flight tests, in-flight tests that they have to pass.
And in terms of being the good neighbor, I mean, if you look at the Mercer County Community College schedule for, when they fly, I mean, there's very little gap if you just look at what the program is. So, I mean, you never get a break. It's all year. It's not like, oh, they're off for the summer or, so in terms of, good neighbor policy, really asking about, is it really going to be, from January 1st almost through December 31st with just 1 or 2 days that they're saying that they're, not flying. I mean, if you look at this RTP schedule that they post on the Mercer County website for the program. So I don't know, but that would be interesting feedback.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
During the conversation with Zoe Reed, Rick Wright says that they don't charge to land over there, which is something that they should and could do. and that was one of the reasons why it attracts so many Cessnas over there. I don't know if anybody's ever followed up on that.
Yeah, what he said was the flight school doesn't pay any rent to TTN. And so, yeah, does that draw more people in? Because it's a free thing to take off, that the flight school's not charging the flyers because they're not getting charged rent.
Details.
Yeah,
All I know is that supposedly Rick said that he started with 2 planes not that long ago, and he's up to 40, and he's trying to be one of the largest in the country. I don't know where the protections are, for the citizen.
Right, this is Dawn. I mean, when I hear that, I'm like, oh, I better move. Like, who wants to live in a neighborhood where that's the drone of the equivalent of a leaf blower is going every 10 minutes?
I saw on their website that he's just opening a school in Florida. Is there any chance that maybe they'll take some of these planes and put them in Florida? So he's just going to grow that location because, I mean, that was a thought that he said, oh, we've been very successful in Trenton, and now I'm going to be opening a school in Florida. So I was hoping maybe that would be something. Well, I just thought maybe you could fly some of those planes down to Florida and at least half of them.
Well, you look, yeah, so you start to look at where does the law protect you? Does it protect you in terms of lead? Does it protect you in terms of the decibels? I don't know what they're trying to do, like I mentioned with this new FAA study on flight schools, what is being incorporated in that? And I would suspect most of that had nothing to do with the people on the ground, because most of the FAA's regulations have nothing to do with people on the ground, but maybe some citizens were able to get something put into that. So that's part of the work sometimes of the committee, trying to look into ways that there are protections out there that we can go after.
It raises an interesting question as to why isn't there some ground rents being paid? What's the advantage to Trenton Mercer Airport not to charge? Where there's got to be something.
They don't make money from rent. I think they only charge Frontier $15,000 a year.
Really?
So I don't know where the money actually comes, where they get it from, some of it's, but I don't think rent is their big money maker.
any thoughts on how to find out about that? Or to ask about that? Think about it.
I'll think about it
Yeah.
because this is mystifying.
Yeah. Regarding curfews, one thing we've heard is that they really can't make hard curfews for the Frontier flights, because if a plane takes off late from Florida or something and is coming here, they can't tell it not to land. And so, we'll hear the big jets coming in at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning. And it's not like they can have a curfew and say planes can't take off or land beyond a certain time. I think we've been told no on that many times. You can have guidelines, but
Maybe Steve, and it's Ryan, right?
Yes, it's Ryan.
As pilots might know, my understanding is that the volunteer, you can fine them if they land within that volunteer curfew, but they certainly never fine them, to my knowledge, over there.
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
Yeah, I personally am unaware of that. But I do know for the Cessnas, the VFR, the visual aspect will probably continue. Like they'll be locked in on that. As far as like a big plane diverting due to like weather conditions instead of going to like Philly, I think that is probably inevitable. And would be done so for, safety reasons.
right. Yeah. I mean, you can't tell the plane they can't land ultimately, but if they take off at 11 from Florida and they're going to land at 1 in the morning, you could plan around that. Right. So, fines for landing out of curfew is an interesting thought. So, was Judy leading? She had to leave. Okay. All right.
So I think we're talking about curfews for small planes versus
Big
Frontier.
planes.
It's just landing and taking off. It's not flying over.
Yeah.
Right. And on that note, Mr. Benson said they have no interest in becoming a freight hub as it would incur significant costs that they do not have funding for. He said, if we could tamp down those rumors, it would be helpful. Now, my reaction to that is when the New Jersey legislature specifically targets a warehouse on airport property, they've got a longer term plan. And when an airport, even if they go through this, went from in the Bucks County Herald, which interviewed us about the airport issues, put out a very nice article about it. You can look up Bucks County Herald. They have a good article there. And she had the woman had a second interview she finally got responses from the airport.
Peg Kwan, who's also a Lower Makefield.
That was Peg.
That's
Yeah.
the reporter.
Yeah. So we've always heard this was a $200 million project that they had planned over there. They wanted federal money for mostly. They quoted to her that they thought it was going to be 300 million. So, that's an enormous increase in the cost of that. But when they have successfully done, if they pull this off and there becomes need for more airplanes, they can put in for another mod. Okay, so for him to say they don't have the infrastructure now to support that, to me, that just means you're writing a proposal down the road to build the infrastructure to support that. I don't see why they would put in this special rider for a massive warehouse. And it also had a $10 million contribution to pollution mitigation associated with it. I mean, I can send you the language from the legislation. And so it was very curious. And he says, well, that's nothing to do with us. It's like, okay, that's his assertion to John Lewis, but to me, it's a little dicey. And then he said lengthening the runway, which is something he had put in his annual planning statement in 2024, was they wanted planes to be flying all over the country, and it might even lead to them needing to lengthen the runway, which they've always sold this as it's not an expansion of the airport. Okay, so since this is new to you guys, the $200 million to expand the terminal from 25,000 to 125,000 square feet was not to increase the airport traffic. And that was the basis that they got the FONSI, because they would said there would be no increase in airport traffic because of this construction project. Once they had their FONSI, they put out their executive planning document and talked about how much growth they were expecting and what they wanted. It might even lead them to needing to lengthen the runway, which is a serious issue over there because the runway ends right at Bear Tavern Road and hits Scotch Road on the other side. So you're talking about, it would be a very difficult thing. And he says, oh, we couldn't do that. We're constrained by I-295 and the railroad and a couple of roads. It's like, but it was in the planning document. And so if this isn't something we just made up or to put words in his mouth, it was vetted and put into their planning document. So, the thing that's so frustrating to us is that the commercial traffic is, this whole project is to increase the airport traffic, and the FAA ignored the growth implications from doing this and rubber stamped the Fonzie because there was no growth associated with spending $200 million to, or maybe 300 is what they're saying now, for doing this project. So that's part of what we were frustrated by, because that also has a narrow window of takeoff corridor, and it's heavily used. And, you know, there's a different community that's affected by that, as well as the small airplanes. So, okay, so coming out of this, there are a few other potential things to look into, and Judy was going to talk about it, but she had to leave. So, more people to submit noise complaints is something that we need to do. Okay, and so talk to your neighbors. If you have friends in New Jersey, start talking to them about, a lot of them don't know that this is going on. And that's why we're hoping the WHYY article will bring it up to the attention. I mean, the New Jersey folks just don't know. Well, some of certainly the majority come this way. There were members of the Trenton Threatens guys that live in Lawrenceville that were very bothered by what was going on and the noise they were getting from it. So, looking at the lead pollution and comparing to the San Jose airport data is another task that would be interesting, but I don't know if that would need to be somebody in New Jersey who would sample their own territory, but if anybody's got an interest in tracking down chemical pollution from those little airplanes, that's another task we're thinking about, because San Jose had a pretty big effect on this flight school because of the lead pollution and what it was showing up with kids in schools and that kind of thing. We would have to look at their reports, okay, and see what they were where they were monitoring, and you know, this fellow who lives right over there just paid for his own samples to be taken and have the lead levels measured. No, it would be lead in the air depositing on surfaces. I'm sure it could. Someone could help with Oprah's to track the Sky Harbor discussions and environmental studies. So, you know, one of the things is New Jersey really doesn't like to, there's always, when they have a project that they want to put out or a permit that they're going to let, there's a window for public comment, but they don't advertise it very well. You really have to pay attention and dig it out of them. So we have a volunteer who lives downtown in Yardley who scours the permits that are being put out and comes up with things that are airport related, so we can look at those and see what the timing is, that if somebody wants to challenge that and make a public or at least make a public comment, we have time to do that. If they're going to put in this new private jet terminal that's run by a company called Sky Harbor, we don't know what environmental steps they're going to take. Is there an EIS that's going to be required? Or when they would slip it through, you know, the cracks to try to get that and say, well, that's all been approved and there was no public comment. So there's a monitoring of that, or issuing Oprahs to say, New Jersey, give us the correspondence that you're having between Mercer County and Sky Harbor. It's public information, but you have to go request it. So there's tasks like that that are things that we need to keep track of. The same thing would be true of this warehouse. So, you know, there could be homework assignments for people if they are interested. But finding other people who could put in noise complaints, or finding people in New Jersey who were bothered by this, would be a huge help. So that's what we've got, and you're going to look into trying to talk to the flight school some.
Yeah, definitely. I will go talk to the flight school, and I will, if I see you at the next meeting, I will let you know. Yeah.
Yeah, not on the app. Yeah, I mean, that's like, see the flight app.
One of them might actually be a leaf blower. Just one.
All right, I'm gonna follow up with Steve Santasiero about trying to pull together that thing. I'll
And
give
then-
you
and cop-
Zoe's information
Yes,
to
thank you.
look into the PFAS stuff.
If you write Steve, just copy Dan in, right? Because Dan's the chair now, so instead of,
Okay,
I mean, maybe John will write the letters, but John wrote them as chair, so I think Dan will write them as chair, but
okay. All right, and is there a follow-up with Middleton that we should do, or they?
I don't know how to get them more involved.
Could we simply send them the charts that we presented to the board? Do you think that might be helpful to just say to them, oh, here's
So
a,
I'll say that one of them is very good friends with Peter Kakianis.
oh,
So I told them that they should speak to Peter,
okay,
and hopefully that will move into something. Sorry, Peter. But
okay. I'll email him about that to look for the contact. I'll copy you, so if there's any confusion as to who it is, you could say it's,
once you tell him it's me, he'll know who it is,
okay,
who started it.
all right. Joe, you got any action things you want to put down for what to follow up on here? Yeah, just any suggestions for what?
I'm gonna
Okay,
go back to those, but I am gonna call Judy, and maybe you have the information. I want to go back and try and find out what the air traffic trend has been and then what it's planned to be. One thing I am doing, I'm reading a white paper on calculating maximum capacity at the local airports. Haven't finished it yet, but hopefully by the end of the month, I'll have it finished. And I'm going to include that in my projections of, yeah, here's what they're telling us, but here's what outside industry experts predict or project airport capacity. We do this in manufacturing all the time, and I'm sure they do it at airports. So we're going to find out what's the standard that is out there for this type of an airport. Without even going much further in terms of researching it, this is LaGuardia compared to the other local municipal airports. Now, right. We call it the LaGuardia of Jersey.
the website.
Pronounced LaGuardia.
Excusez-moi, madame, c'est pas mon frère.
I'm from Queens.
Okay. In terms of tracking the traffic numbers, Steve had come up with, from the FAA website, a link to looking at different airports and what kind of flight numbers they had. And so we did look at that over months, and the last few months, they've actually been down. Now, it's not tracking flight school. Okay, it's tracking the commercial traffic. And so, Mr. Benson,
Actually, Richard, I think it tracks all air operations.
does it?
I think it does, yeah. It's just one of the things you have to select in that menu.
Okay,
So whether you
Take another
select
look
it
at
or
that.
not, yeah.
okay. All right, but that we can share. If you guys give me your emails, we could share that link. You can be better informed with what the FAA says the numbers are, because they should be keeping track of it. Okay,
And they're big numbers. They're really big numbers.
I found on the FAA's website a place that you could post the complaint about your helicopter, but I had to go through the Department of Transportation to get backwards, because when I first went to the FFA, it just talked about if you had complaints related to being a passenger or ADA compliance. So I just kept Googling. I mean, so I went to the Department of Transportation, yep, and then it said if you have a complaint about air traffic, and then it linked you to. It was a form, yeah, you know, you like a good form.
Okay, thank you all for coming. Mhm.
Good night.